Are we gonna? That'd be awesome. One more person. Yeah, I know. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, all right.
So, did everybody get one more paper?
Sorry?
Actually, oh, you mean the camera? Scott, do you have extras of those?
We are working on getting some
I
extra.
have one
printed.
extra.
It's okay right now.
Is that the
Christine.
full set or is that just?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I mean,
Okay.
you can see that the. You can see both of them.
Yeah, that's good. If you want, actually, you can raise it up. There's the right ones. That makes sense. All right, guys, we don't wanna, we wanna be respectful of your time. We appreciate you guys being here, so we don't wanna, be too much later for Scott. This is actually on time, so maybe a little early. So, that's awesome, so appreciate that. So, all right, guys, let's just kick it off with, show of hands. Who knows what a 411 and GPS are with Keller Williams? Okay, don't be shy, Karen. Karen, come on, we gotta see you. Broker of record, you gotta know what it's. All right, who's ever tried to complete a 411 or GPS in the past? And keep your hands up if you use one every day, every week, every month.
every week,
Well, my hand also comes down. I don't know about you,
hit or
but
miss.
yeah, so we realized that through some conversations with people that this is a really super powerful tool that we can use. So Nalini and I actually were talking about it. And I said, well, geez, I really got to plug back into this. And for anybody who doesn't know how Scott and I met, Scott actually really introduced me to Keller Williams. He was the productivity coach in our previous brokerage. So my thought immediately went to Scott. So we got together and we started putting this little class together. So
Yeah,
what our kind of intention for this class is really just to go over the GPS in 411, how it's, you know, intended to be used. And then actually have some conversations about those of you. I know, like Ashley, I think you use it on a somewhat regular basis now, and I know you're using it. If anybody else who just kind of have some more open conversations. So Scott, why don't you take us through the exercise one? So can everybody has one, or everybody can see it on the TV what exercise one is?
yeah, so we're starting with goal setting to the now, and awesome intro, Pete. The one thing I do want to also point out is that one more raise of hands, who has read The One Thing? So a lot of these tools, like if you have read One Thing or haven't read One Thing, I can't encourage you enough to go back and read that book again. These tools are all like these printouts, just so you know. Pete, you got these off of like theonething.com, right?
Yep.
So everything that you're looking at in front of you today, we hope that you do like scribble notes, put goals down to paper, and just know that you can always go to theonething.com and print these out anytime you want. And really think that reading that book, especially in a market like this that's shifting and so much is going on. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it leads us to sometimes like naturally just start running like we've got our, you know, chickens with heads cut off, right? It's that effect that comes when we start to scramble to try and make things happen. And this is all meant to kind of ground you back into sticking to your goals, creating a path forward that helps you achieve whatever you want in your life. So yeah, we start out with the goal setting to the now. And the point of this exercise, what I want you guys to think about when we start out at the top of the page, right? And we talk about someday goals. Pete, we had a little bit of a conversation around this the other day where I asked you, like, what's your someday goal? And what did you say? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so for me and Ash collectively, you know, we just did a business planning retreat, which I would encourage everybody to do. If you can do it quarterly, if you can do it for a day, ideally, if you can get out of your own space and spend, you know, an overnight or maybe 2 full days really focusing and not working in your business, taking as best you can to put your phone on do not disturb, have somebody else cover showings for you, and really look inward and really focus on what everything, right? Your someday goals we're about to get into. So for us, it's, you know, to build a level 7 business. So for anybody who maybe doesn't know what a level 7 business is you pretty much work on going from an owner operator of your business, which I think almost all of us in this room are, to just being an owner.
Yeah, and the thing that I kind of pushed back on Pete, as I am often known to do, was that I said that's awesome, and like I wanted him to also think about going back to that goal and putting even more clarity on it, like, what does a 7-level business look like? Like, how many agents are on the team? What is the structure of that 7-level business? What kind of volume are you guys doing? How many units are you selling? What areas are you covering? Like, really start to like paint the picture of what that looks like. And then beyond that, the cool thing with this exercise, and I think we had a note on here about like the idea that like the someday goal should be something that when you think about it, it is literally so far off in the distance that it feels like you're looking at it through fog. Like, you can't even quite imagine how you're going to get there. And so beyond just defining what that 7-level business looks like, really think about like, what does your life look like then? Like, who are you when you get that level? And what are you doing with your life when you have that 7-level business?
And that's
So-
part of why I wore this shirt today, right? Because that's what I mean, why are we all here, right? I don't think anybody got into real estate, maybe in the beginning, but if you're still in real estate, you didn't get it because it was an easy job just to pay your bills and kind of go through life, right? I think it's pretty safe to say we all got into real estate to do better, achieve that someday goal, reach for something greater than, you know, a 9-to-5 kind of constructed kind of job. So
For everyone on Zoom, Pete.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So what does it say? It's
Life.
life so amazing. It's almost unbelievable. So that's a Jeff Gloverism. So if you guys also, if you're not going to see him tomorrow, there's a little plug for Jeff Glover, huge Jeff Glover guy. So smart goals. Huh?
$39.
Yeah, $40 to get in front of one of the biggest probably biggest team in Michigan. But Thursday, sorry. If you know, I mean, clearly I have Ashes, Ashes are the calendars are, so, but anyway, so, go ahead, yeah.
So yeah, tying it back to this, right, this first step is really crucial because I think it'll put more meaning to when we get to the GPS goal setting and the 411 and like, why are we doing these things? Because you have to have some definition around what are you actually going towards that is further out in the distance than just the now. And I think Gary Keller, Nalini, I asked you about this quote the other day, I think, and like tweaked it for me a little bit, but it's basically that Gary Keller, and I think someone else really smart in history, said that we often overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years. And so that's why I think like just really sitting down, and it's super important, this step of the process, just sitting down and carving out that quiet time, that thinking time to just think and imagine and get creative. And like, once we set that someday goal, now the goal setting to the now is kind of put into place where our next step is to start to achieve and define what that 5-year goal looks like, right?
Yeah, so now before we go too much further with that, you know, we all kind of most people in this room have expressed that they've tried it, maybe not sticking to it. I mean, even just having conversations, this is not an easy exercise from beginning to end to really put together, right? And so we went through and we were talking about some of the traps that we sometimes fall victim to when we're trying to complete one of these. One of them is not setting enough time aside to complete this without distractions. That is a really quick way to get frustrated and give up on this. It's not easy to break the day-to-day, the limiting beliefs that we kind of go through every day and we tell ourselves, and really setting enough time distraction free to really, you know, set some thinking time, be in a positive place that gives you energy is going to help you kind of think bigger, to help you kind of achieve some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing we talked about was like feeling like this can be a scratch pad, right? Like you can come back and revisit it and tweak those goals. And I think it's I mean, we were scratching all over the paper the other day. So It's like, you mentioned the not setting enough time, not thinking big enough with your someday goal, not talking about it with other people.
Yeah.
What's important about that?
Yeah, so it's huge. It makes it more real. So perfect example. We had a transaction without getting into details. They were trying to the other side was trying to take a piece of commission that didn't really belong to them. So we stood up for ourselves and we fought it. And I was going back and forth with one of our leaders here. And when I told him that, you know, we got it, he said, put that in the Italy fund. And that was really powerful because that person knows that part of our big why is to spend a year in Italy, right? And it's scary to tell people that, because when you tell people that, people hold you accountable. But what also is really awesome about that is I was reminded of that on a day that maybe I wasn't thinking of it. And there's power in that.
Yeah. And I think that ties directly into, so like putting it out into the universe has power, and I was telling Pete, and I also shared with our productivity committee meeting the other day, the power of writing the goals down, right? So I really am gonna encourage you guys, when you do this, like have printed paper. That's why I said, go to the one thing and print this out again if you have to. Because the power of writing it down and actually scribing versus just sitting in front of your computer and typing this up. So what I shared the other day was that earlier this year, I had written down a bunch of really big goals for myself. And I put them into, I have a 5-year journal where basically every night I'm supposed to sit down and kind of jot down what happened for the day, big ahas, things like that. And the cool thing with that journal is over 5 years, you get to see where you grew and all that fun stuff. I tucked all my goals written down into that journal. I closed the page, I think it was like February 10th of this year. Did not open it again until like September 28th of this year. So I missed like a huge chunk of time writing that 5-year journal, my best laid plan to follow those goals and review them every single day. It's like, my God, what the hell? But I jumped back on the horse. I opened the 5-year journal. I pulled out the goals, and as I'm looking at them, I couldn't believe how many things I've accomplished off of that list without even paying attention to them. And I think that power comes from sharing goals with people and also writing your goals down. There's some power to that, you know. I know they talk about it in like Miracle Morning a lot, right?
Yeah, has anybody else ever experienced that? They wrote down some goals and then they came back to them, they're like, oh man, I actually did this.
Yeah.
And same here. And then it's like, well, why am I not doing this every day? Why am I not looking? So that is one of the things we said too, not reviewing it regularly. So it doesn't necessarily have to be every day. I would encourage you to have some sort of piece of paper in your planner somewhere that you kind of look at it every single day, either in the morning, evening, throughout the day, whatever that is. And the other thing, actually, I do just want to kind of mention is like, this is just one tool for goal setting and things like that. This may not work for you. You may already have something that you already use. There's tons of tools out there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this one. This is just a version of a tool that can help you, accomplish your goals. So just keep that in mind as well. If it's not this, that's okay. But we would both, I think, encourage you to have some sort of system that follows you through to hitting your goals. And then when we talk about goals, we talk about SMART goals. Who knows what SMART goals are? Anybody familiar with SMART goals? Smart or smarter. So when we set goals, we don't want them to just be, weight loss usually tends to be like the easiest thing to relate pretty much all goals to. So when we say we don't want to just set the goal for the year or the week or the month to lose a bunch of weight, right? That's not specific, right? How do we know if we've accomplished it? That's was that measurable or achieve? That's the achievable, attainable, measurable. How far are you to or away from your goal? How much do you need to do every week, month, quarter? Make it relevant. So something that, right? How would you describe
Yeah,
that?
so the relevant, so just to break down the full thing, it's SMART goals are specific, attainable, relevant, and time bound, right? So relevant, when we use this page too, and we haven't gotten to the idea of like, once you have that someday goal defined, you're now going to ask yourself, what are things that I could accomplish to take me closer to achieving that goal in the next 5 years? And then you just work your way down. In the next 1 year, what could I accomplish? The next month, the next week, the next day, and right now, what could I be doing to take a step forward towards accomplishing that goal? And the reason why relevant comes into play, as we'll see when we start to go through the rest of the exercises, is you don't want to have, right? If your goal was, I want to lose 20 pounds by the end of the year, and then you're saying that some of your smaller goals are completely like irrelevant to that, they're not really focusing you in on how are you going to achieve that. So you want your goal to actually match up to what the bigger goal looks like.
So we don't want it to be, we don't want to lose 20 pounds by the end of this year. And then one of the goals be, be the level on PlayStation. Like that's not going to get us any closer to where we want to be. So a little extreme, but probably.
And time bound is important because, right, the other thing, just revisiting that idea of the someday goal being so far out, right? Also want to set the expectation that like we set time bound goals so we have a target end date in mind, right? And the cool thing though is that as long as you're taking action steps towards those goals, quite frankly, like, I mean, depending on the level of accountability you want to have around it, I still find it so amazing when I hear people set like a really big goal and put a deadline on it. They get to that deadline and it's not accomplished, and yet you look at how much growth they've had in that area that they focused on. So I think it's important to set goals with dates in mind, but also know that you don't have to sit there and beat yourself up if you're not accomplishing things specifically on a certain time frame. So.
And one other thing I would say, and I would write this down, is that it's okay to have multiple GPSs, right? This is what we're kind of talking about when we call it the GPS. I think one of the biggest mistakes, without a doubt, is trying to put all of your someday goals, like all of the categories in our life. I think the one thing says we have 7 categories in our life, right? I'm not going to name them all, but it's health, wealth, business, spiritual, family, right? These are all areas of our life that, we should want to improve in. So I think one of the common pitfalls is trying to get all into one GPS or one first exercise. Again, it's okay to have multiple GPSs. And actually it's encouraged to have multiple GPSs. So
Okay, can I add on to that?
yeah, please.
For anyone who might not, or who might hear that and might think, okay, I haven't done one, how am I gonna do multiple? And I do need multiple, but how do I even start that? One thing I would say, and this is just based on my journey with using a GPS and especially a 411, you'll do it more the more that you see results. So if you just focus, like ask yourself, okay, what's one area if I could really use this to help me? What's one area? Maybe that's business for you. For me in the beginning, it was my health. I just wasn't doing anything at all to really invest in my health. And I say health is one of my most important things. And when I looked at my time in my week, only 1 hour going to the gym in a week of all the hours in a week. When I did the math, I was like, what? Okay, percentage wise, that is telling me that what I say is really important to me doesn't actually show up in my calendar. So for me, that was what I needed. So whatever it is for you guys, choose the one that you really, really need that for in your own life. And when you see it start to show up in results, you're going to want to put more GPSs in your life. You're going to say, okay, if it worked out like this for my health, I need this for my business. Imagine what that looks like. Or I need this for my family and to invest in those relationships. Right. So that seems like a lot. Just choose one where you will see the biggest impact in your life. Focus there. And you're going to want to do a GPS and a 411 for other parts of your life. But that belief and seeing the results in that system really pay back just in short periods of time. You'll buy into the model and that will get you to be more consistent if that's helpful for you guys to hear.
Yeah, good advice.
Yeah. Okay.
So before we move on to the exercise 2 part of this, does anyone have questions on the goal setting to now part of this exercise? Questions, thoughts, comments? No. All right.
Your advice is one of these is for personal, one of these is for business, or break it down further?
I think that you could, if you wanted to, have multiple of this first sheet. And then, so this exercise is now. So yeah, and that's where you're gonna see exercise 2 starts to lay out. Let's say you work this through on some personal goals that you had for yourself as well as some business ones. You might have 3 or 4 of these pages at this point. You can then now move on to exercise 2, which is you're starting to roadmap in the big chunk goals, your someday 5-year and 1-year goals in those different areas of your life. So you could take a whole bunch of these sheets, have different goals and all laid out, and then you start to categorize them into this sheet, which breaks it down by business and personal.
Because I think what I just recently ran into, and I think one of the challenges that can come up with something like this is, okay, you set your someday goal and it's awesome, right? And then you get to, maybe you combine some personal with some business, right? And now that's kind of one goal. And then you get to your 5-year goal and you're like, well, in 5 years, and then you start getting conflicted because you're like, well, should I be setting my 5-year goal as a volume goal or like a health goal or like a house goal, or it can get a little confusing. And then now we're starting this whole exercise, which is supposed to be a fun kind of like, future looking exercise, can start to create anxiety and can start to get challenging. So I would definitely encourage with starting just like a business goal to start and a personal goal to start. I think the health goal is a great place to start, even if you don't even do business, just because you want to get a feel for this. I wasn't sure. Can you guys humor me for like 2 minutes here? You guys trust me here for a second? All right.
Ash is questionable.
All right. So for a minute, guys, I want you to just close your eyes for a minute, okay? And I promise my eyes are also going to be closed. So if you open them, I won't know. So close your eyes and let's just start to envision a someday goal. And let's say whatever that is for you, it could be professional, it could be personal. What does it look like for you to achieve that, right? Are you on stage somewhere? Are you living in the house that you want to live in? Are you running a huge business? And what's around you? What does it feel like? And then I want you to take a minute and I want you to analyze your body. And what do you feel like when you're achieving that goal? Right? When you're achieving that goal, do you feel heavy and sluggish? Do you feel fit? Do you feel powerful? So this is kind of just in a way, you guys can open your eyes now, but of kind of showing how health, right? It's important to envision that as well, right? Because when we're accomplishing our goals, we feel fit, we feel strong, we feel ready to go. So it is a crucial part of that as well. So I just think that health has a lot to do with it. It doesn't even need to be weight, right? How are we breathing? What are all of these different things? Are we taking the supplements we need? Do we have the energy, right? I think those are all things that kind of go in line with that. So thank you for humoring me on that. So I just learned that on the way here, so I wasn't sure if I was gonna share. So I hope that's helpful.
I like that. So we're not gonna spend as much time on exercise too, because it is a little bit of just pulling your someday goals and putting them onto this page, both categorized as personal and business. And guys, the other thing that I would say is, like, sometimes I've been guilty of this as well. And I think even the other day when we were trying to like plan out how to like teach the class, like sometimes, holy shit, like this is just so monotonous. Like what are we doing here? Like feels like we're just repeating the same goal that was over here on this page, over to this page. And why are we like putting this basic stuff down on paper 4 different places? And yet I think like what Pete just walked us through, that exercise, is like a good reminder of what, like, it really is like, you just have to, I'm like thinking back to specifically a time that I had my coach walk me through what was going wrong with my business. And without diving into it too much, it ended with basically, he was like, you need to go to bed. And he didn't tell me this. We walked through this exercise of breaking down like, well, what's going on with your business here? And it just kind of kept taking steps backwards. And when it was like, oh, well, like I should be waking up earlier and like getting my morning started, so I'm in a good flow. And he's like, all right, well, like, if you were gonna wake up in the morning earlier and do that, like what would you have to do? And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I would have to set my alarm clock. And he's like, yeah, well, and like, what would you do before that? And it's like, well, I guess I would have to have like a good bedtime routine. And it all boiled down to like, I had to be in bed by 10 p.m. to achieve all the other goals that I wanted in my life. And it felt like in that moment, I swear to God, we spent 30 minutes on a call talking about what I thought was supposed to be like business and how am I going to achieve my goals this year. And instead it worked backwards to like, oh, I guess I just have to go to bed consistently at a more reasonable time. And yet it's like, you really do have to, when you're talking about these goals, like, I guess that's why we keep honing in on how much time it takes to do this and how you have to revisit it, because it's just every time you think you've got your goal set, question like, well, what am I truly going to do to take a step towards that goal, right? And it sometimes is going to be as simple as going to bed on time, as ridiculous as that seemed to be in the moment. And now that's the thing that I revisit every time that I'm out of alignment with my goals and feel like things in my life are going a little funky. It's like, what's going wrong? Oh shit, like I haven't been going to bed on a regular time. I'm staying up too late and it throws everything else out of whack. So really defining that one area of your life that could propel all of your goals forward, super important. So.
Guys, I just had a question from Nicola Esposito. What are a few more examples of a GPS? And Nicola, if you want to unmute and maybe expand on that while they go through it. I'm not sure what you mean by a few examples of a GPS.
And Nicola, I don't think we're at the GPS yet, so hang tight with us and we'll get you there.
Well, if I had to guess, I think he's probably more referring to different like tools that we can use, right? So there we have the full one or the GPS, right? Something else that I've used is the full focus planner, which is pretty good. It'll kind of go through your goals and kind of remind you of some things throughout the week. There's tons. Yeah, that's exactly the full focus plan. Thank you. I would have left that here. But there's tons of stuff, and it's just a matter of what really works for you. But if that doesn't answer it, feel free to chime in some more. So, anything else that you think maybe we missed or to cover on this, exercise 2-part for long-term goals?
I wanted to just go over the focusing question. For those of you who haven't read the one thing, it's like right on the back cover. And I don't know if you mentioned this, but that one question, if there's any part of this that seems like a lot, I don't know where to start. Just remember the whole book and the concept is based on one question. And that question you should be asking yourself is, what is that one thing that I can do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? And if you notice, if you see this, the questioning with the someday goal, the 5-year, 1-year, monthly, it follows that line of questioning. What's the one thing I can do in the next 5 years? And then what's the one thing I can do this year to really make that someday goal happen? And when you guys will see when we'll go through the 411, I think the most powerful part of a 411 is that week by week glance. And I don't look at my 411 daily, but I can promise you guys, I look at it weekly. And what I have found is when I'm doing that exercise and I'm looking at it week by week, I do catch, just like what you said about your bedtime, Scott,
Mhm.
I catch the thing that's the bottleneck for me growing to the next level. And the way that works is like this. So you build out your weekly plan. Okay, these are my top 3 goals. If I did nothing else in my week, these 3 would actually help me hit my monthly goal. And you just said, if you did nothing else, but you did these 3, you're saying you will hit your goal. So tell me why you would end your 7 days not accomplishing only 3 things. And that was a question that I had to ask myself. I would sit down with myself 1 week after, and I actually sit down with Matt, he's my accountability partner. We look at my week and we ask, okay, you told me that these are the 3 most important, why didn't you get them done? And I said, I had 7 days, I got distracted. Okay, great. Well, what got you distracted and how do we prevent that from happening again next week? And it taught me that a mistake or something that's happening that's bottlenecking you from getting to the next level, in that 1 week, that's okay. But if you have 2 weeks in a row like that, okay, it's gonna drag on. 3 weeks in a row, okay, you're not really doing anything to change. By 4 weeks, you're now building a habit of that thing that's preventing you from getting to the next level. So I think if there's anything that you guys take away from this class, just take your 411, schedule a regular time in your calendar, sit down with yourself. I call it my CEO time. You're the owner of your business. Sit down for 30 minutes and look at your week progress and your 3 goals and figure out, okay, why didn't I hit it last week? How am I gonna make sure if I have the same exact week this week, I had the same distractions, the family was still in town, I had all of these, I was planning Thanksgiving dinner, I had the same exact things in my calendar, but what did I do differently while I had that same week that made sure that I hit my top 3? That's gonna catch the things that are holding you guys back from hitting them, and that evaluate, I know John Maxwell has a great quote. People say that experience is a great teacher. Experience itself is not a great teacher, evaluated experiences. If you guys are not looking back at your week and you're not figuring out, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how am I gonna make my next week not have the same obstacles as this week, you're gonna end up having the same weeks. And I don't know if you guys have ever felt that, or 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, oh my gosh, it's the fall, what? I had all summer and I don't feel like I grew my business the way that I wanted. So that week by week check, and just put in your calendar, 30 minutes of CEO time to sit with your 411. I guarantee you, you're gonna catch things that you didn't know you would catch, just like Scott was saying about his bedtime.
Yeah, and I think Natalie, the important part of that too is like, I'm sure that Matt is intimately aware of like some of the things you do want to achieve.
Yes.
And the reason that we do that 411 check-in, and the reason why I also still think like this is such an important part of it is, this is really like your big why, right? And the thing that, so like back when I was in that coaching position, I never, had like a ruler and was like slapping Pete, like, why didn't you achieve your goals last week? Like, he did that to himself. And so we would have a conversation around it. But like, we are the only person that stands in between us and our goals. And so when you sit down with your 411 and you're like, all right, like, well, I was off track for this week. You want to define what got in the way, right? And like, why didn't that happen? And I also think it's important to come back to this and say, like, is this still important? Asking yourself if your own goals are important is a really powerful question to revisit, because if again, you're getting in your own way in achieving anything that you put down on this page. No one else can define whether you achieve this level of success.
Can I give
So-
one tangible example? I see we have a lot of experience in this room, so I just want to give an example that might resonate with you guys. Has anyone here ever worked a job where maybe it was your first year working that job and you met someone who was working there for 20 plus years, and you felt like in that 1 year that you were working there, you actually made a lot more changes to the company, you felt like you were a great addition to the team, and you're thinking, how is this person with this company for 20 plus years and I only came 1 year, but I felt like I actually did more? Has anyone else been in a situation like that where you felt like you were more productive, right? And so it gets me thinking, how is that possible when they had more time, right? And I read somewhere that it's not that they had 20 years of experience. For them, they actually had the same year of experience 20 times in a row. And so I just want to challenge you guys. Are you having the same month in your business or in your personal life? It's not that, oh, I spent a year trying to work on myself, or did you spend 1 month, 2 months in a row, 3 months in a row, not changing anything, and then you're going to end up just repeating the same habits and growth plan that you're currently on.
Yeah.
I just don't want to ever be that person where, let's say someone who's working on something for 1 year, they can look at me and be like, but you were working on this for 10 years? What? I just don't want to be that example. And so that, if that resonates with you guys, just don't be that, be the good example, be the person who does so much more with 1 year than someone else does with 10 years. And the last example I'll say on this, and Fred's not in this room, but Fred and I were just talking about Bill Gates, how Bill Gates literally has the same exact amount of time that all of us have. How is he using his 24-hour day?
I guess he's on Zoom.
So how is he using his 24-hour day differently than we are? When literally he doesn't, with everything he's done, he has never ever been given an extra hour of time. So just really challenge yourself, you know, what you're doing in a 24-hour day. If we followed you guys, we're just a fly on your little shoulder. We followed you for 24 hours. You can tell what someone's life is going to look like in 5 years. And like, I hope that scares you in some level, because it'll challenge you to be like, if someone followed me for 24 hours and they could tell where I'm gonna be in 5 years, am I happy with that? I wasn't. When I heard that, I'm like, I gotta change my calendar.
So just to play off of that a little bit, but also to like, so the one thing I'm like trying to figure out how to put it into phrase here, but it's like also that like maybe just putting this in like a different view, right? That person that was at the company for 10 years and just kind of going through the motions, like I would want to like hear like whether they were happy, right? But like I think there's something too to be said about like no one can make you feel guilty about your goals, whether they're too small or too big. But I think it's great to have people around you that do challenge you and say like, is that enough? Like, are you doing enough to be happy? Like, because I think like from my experience back then too, the number one question that I always got from brand new agents coming into the business was, all right, well, like, I'm so excited, I got my license, and like, what's the average agent make in the first year in real estate? Anybody else feel like, remember that day when you got into real estate and you were wondering like, how much money can I make doing this, right? And I would say, well, my question for you, I guess, would be like, do you want to be the average agent? And then secondarily, like, if you don't want to be the average agent, like, how much do you want to make this year? And then in my role as the coach there, my goal was, I have to help that person achieve whatever goal comes out of their mouth, right? So if somebody could come in and say, I want to make 30,000. That's excellent. Let's do it. Like, let's put a plan into place to get you there. But I also do want to check in and say, like, is 30,000 going to help you achieve everything you want to achieve? Or does it have to be more? And somebody could come into the room and say, I want to make 300,000. Great, let's go, right? Like, that's where all of this comes into play. You have to just know what your goal is, feel good about it, and then set a plan into place that is focused and relevant to helping you achieve those goals. So.
Love it. So yeah, just two things I kind of just wanted to touch on real quick. Who here, show of hands, thinks that they would be more productive if someone followed them around with a camera? Right? Okay, good. So we can all agree to that, which speaks to power naps are important. There's no judgment there. But you know, that kind of speaks to, you know, now you said setting your CEO time. And setting your CEO time, right? If you scheduled a meeting with the CEO of Keller Williams, are you gonna make sure that you're there? Right? We're gonna make sure that we're there. Please, everyone say yes. Right? Okay, we're all gonna make sure that we're there. But then we set our own time and we're CEOs of our own business and our own lives. And how often do we move that off of our calendar and let that go by the wayside really quickly, right? Because it's always going to be easier and we're always going to be more accountable to others than we will be to ourselves. So again, this is not an accountability necessarily meeting. We had one of those the last class I taught, but super important. I would really encourage somebody at the end of this class, if you really want to make this happen, no matter who it is, your family member, friends, kids. I think Rania, was it Rania who said that she gets her kids involved and like they hit goals to go to Disney? Like that's powerful stuff, guys. And so yeah, I just think that that's worth mentioning. And I liked what you said too about nobody can make you feel good or bad about your goals, right? There's no goal too high or too low. It's what fits into your life. But also that the only person who really does make you feel good about your goals is yourself, right? It's not really about anybody else. So, which is why these first two parts are super important to really spend some time. You know, this is more of the thinking time, not so much the detailed, how am I gonna, you know, how many open houses am I gonna do? How many of this, how many, I mean, maybe it is a little bit of that, but it's not, how many open house signs am I going to put out? How many doors am I going to knock on? That's not what this is about. This is, what do I want my life to look like? what do I need my life to look like in 5 years to get there? What do I need it to look like in 1 year to get there? And then what are things that I can start doing right now as we're going to start getting into exercise 3. But before we move on, any other questions on that or any input, anything anybody has had experience with they want to share?
Tim just threw in the chat, if you wanna read that, Pete.
Yes, Tim?
Tim Waller.
The only goals you never achieve are the ones you never set. Well said.
The other thing, just this ties back to putting your goals out there into the universe, but also I think it's really important too to know that when you're setting goals, especially if you have some big goals for yourself. You mentioned the example of like the kids with Rania, like I don't have kids myself, but I damn sure I always tell the people around me, my close loved ones, like what some of my goals are and why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Because it's important to have buy-in. And like I love that example that Rania gave of like having her whole family rally around some of her big real estate goals so that they could get the reward of going to Disney. Because then it became, it's not, oh, mom is like leaving us to go do an open house. It was, wow, like mom's gonna go get us one step closer to Disney. And so I think there's a really cool thing that happens when you have buy-in with people, whether it's kids, family, share your goal with someone you love and, have them understand why you're, sometimes it requires changing a lot of habits in your life. So it's important to share with people.
And I said we were gonna move on, but also, who here has a hard time saying no? Right? So this is a really important time to think about that, right? Because when we're setting our goals to our wives, Fred does, our wives, our husbands, ourselves, these different things, our kids, always understand that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? It's an expression used. But when somebody, asks you to do something, what a good coach is going to ask you if you're having a hard time saying no, a good coach is going to say, okay, so if you don't achieve what you said you were going to do and you don't get the new house that's closer to your job for your wife that you promised her, how is that going to make you feel, right? And that then becomes quite clear. Listen, this other thing, I would love to do it, but not right now because this is more important. So that's just, it kind of all works in together as far as like helping you say no. Having clarity on what your one thing is, on where you're trying to go, will help the decisions fall into place a lot easier than they sometimes will if we're not super clear. So, all right, on to exercise 3, the GPS.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into tangible, detailed stuff. Everybody have a pen because we're actually going to give you a plan that will, we believe, allow you to close 40 units with an average sale price of $500,000 to result in 20 million in volume and $500,000 in GCI. Does everybody want that plan?
Yeah.
Say yes. All right, let's go. All right, so we're gonna start with our one thing for the year. So funny enough, I say it jokingly, but Scott and I started putting together a sample just to give you guys like a good example of what it could look like. And we're sitting there and we're like, we might have to take this plan.
That's a good plan at the end of the day.
Implementing this. So, okay, so this is, okay, at the top, your one thing for the year, right? This is your goal for the year. So to close 40 million.
40 units.
I'm sorry, 40 units. Sorry, this is exercise 3.
Yep, so exercise 3.
So right on that top line, you would write close 40 units with an average sale price of $500,000. So that's close 40 units with an average sale price of $500,000 to result in $20 million in volume. So that results in 20 million in volume and $500,000 in GCI or gross commission income. Everybody got it?
What was the last line?
And
500,000?
$500,000 in GCI. So now this exercise is often referred to as the 1-3-5, right?
Yep.
So this is your one goal for the year, your 3 priorities, and then your 5 strategies on how you're going to get there. So why don't you take us through?
Yeah, and just the one thing that I wanted to point out is with that one thing goal that we just stated or Pete stated there, think back to that SMART goal setting and realize, right, does it pass the sniff test? Is it specific enough? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it relevant to what we're trying to accomplish for the year? And is it time bound? And I think that goal that we set for the sample is definitely answers all of those. So for our sample here, we did priority number 1. We're gonna focus on our database, our sphere of influence, and past clients. So that's gonna be priority number 1 is focused on database, SOI, sphere of influence, past clients. And from this, we thought that out of our 40 total units that we're gonna sell for the year, we would achieve 20 sales out of our database. Everybody caught up on that? All right, so then what are we gonna do with our database to achieve this goal? Strategy number 1 was getting everyone onto a monthly neighborhood nurture or whatever your form of monthly market update would be. An email that's going out, whether it's in command with a monthly neighborhood nurture or a monthly market update. Going to everyone in your database. Strategy number 2 would be to put together 12 newsletter emails. 12 newsletter emails for strategy number 2. Strategy number 3 would be to follow the DTD2. So that we call and or text our database at least 4 times a year. And is everyone familiar with the DTD2? Is anybody not familiar with it?
Yeah, so DTD2 is do the database twice. So there's a system, you know, here that kind of outlines who you should be calling and when you should be calling them. They should be your, you know, I would say your top 20%, not everybody in your database. And just, you know, calling with some sort of item of value or checking in on them and seeing how you can help them. And of course, asking for referrals.
And the cool thing for anybody, if you need a refresher on the DTD2, if you Google it, it'll definitely come up and show you the breakdown in. The thing that it does really nicely is it pairs letters of the alphabet so that when you're calling, right, you might have a lot of S's in your phone. So it'll pair it with another letter that is got maybe fewer, like a Z, right? So you're gonna call everyone that's got either an S last name or a Z. Then it'll pair an M with a Q, right? So it does a really nice job of chunking down, which I think kind of the theme of all of these exercises is how do you take something big and chunk it down so that it's, you know, that easy to achieve goal. Strategy number 4 is going to be to host 2 client events. We're going to do 2 client events. And then strategy number 5 to round things off is we're going to send 6 physical mailers. So whether that's a postcard or a golden letter or just a, you know, thanks for being in my database card. Doesn't really matter as long as we're hitting our database 6 times in their actual mailbox.
So I also just added too, as we're talking about it, Popeyes. If anybody's not familiar with what a Popeye is, so we're just stopping by, bringing them, you know, some little gift or goodie or, you know, fireworks, popcorn, stuff like that. No, like, you know, 4th of July, smart, stuff like that. Yeah. Guess you guys don't like that one, no big deal. But just something that, you know, gets you in front of them. Mailers are great, but, you know, I try to do something that is not a throwaway item, you know, have it be like a football calendar or a conversion chart or something that is just going to be of value, not something that is, hey, I just sold this house. Like, no, that's not what we're sending to our database. You want to farm that kind of stuff, that's a little bit different, but just make sure you're ideally giving them stuff that's going to hang around the house for a little bit longer than just, you know, hey, that's cool, and then writing.
The other thing to point out with this database section is, does anybody notice a model that we worked off of to develop this?
Mhm.
What's that?
36.
Yeah. So there's, you know, one of the beautiful things about this is like, we're not reinventing the wheel. We sat down and said, okay, well, how are you supposed to communicate with your database? That info is right in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. They do say in the book that it's a 33 touch that's been revised more recently to bump it up to 36. So we incorporated 36 touches. And if we do that, the cool thing too is that everything kind of starts to become predictable. Our 20 sales will also tell us how many people we need in our database to achieve this goal, because the MRA model says for every 12 people in our database, if we touch them 36 times throughout the year, we should see 2 pieces of business from those touches. So we can literally back end all of our goals and see whether they're actually attainable.
So we have 20 sales as priority number 1, so we wrote that on the top, right? Because we said 40 units, so we want to break that down. Well, how many units are coming out of each category? And of course, that can change. So priority number 2, everybody's favorite, FSBOs and expires. And we can expect 10 sales from FSBOs and expires. So how do we get 10 sales out of FSBOs and expires throughout the year? So strategy number 1 is going to be practice scripts and role play 5 times a week. So practice scripts and role play 5 times a week. And 30 minutes a day, that's probably a good idea. Strategy number 2, and guys, I'm gonna go a little fast here because I want to make sure we have some time at the end. So if you don't get anything, just let us know at the end and we'll do it. But so strategy number 2 is set a minimum of 2 appointments per week. Set a minimum of 2 appointments per week. Well, in order to do that, we probably look at strategy number 3, which requires calling 3 hours daily.
5 days a week.
Calling 3 hours daily, 5 days a week. Well, what's another way that we can generate business from for sale by owners other than calling 3 hours a day, 5 days a week is knock on 10 doors per week. So knock on 10 doors per week. I would probably recommend they be expireds or old expireds or maybe for sale by owners. You're gonna have a better conversion rate than just knocking on random doors. So knock on 10 doors per week. Strategy number 5 would be send follow-up notes for every appointment set. So again, that's send follow-up note for every appointment set. Again, these are just recommendations, but send follow-up note for every appointment set. Something else that we didn't cover when we started going through this, and we'll get to it on priority number 3, is it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 strategies. If you're like, I'm going to do all this other stuff, but I know I'm not going to do handwritten notes, just take handwritten notes off. Don't put something there just to fill a spot. Yeah. So you want to take us through priority number 3?
Absolutely. So priority number 3, we thought fill in our plan with open houses. And we thought we could finish out with 10 more sales coming from our open houses. So open houses, 10 sales are coming from there. Strategy number 1, we're gonna have to host a minimum of 3 open houses monthly. So whether it's our own listings or we're finding another agent in the office or posting into the Facebook group to look for opportunities, we need to host a minimum of 3 monthly. Every time we host an open house, we're gonna circle prospect 100 homes in that neighborhood. We're circle prospecting 100 homes in the neighborhood to announce we're doing the open house.
And again, circle prospecting is, cold calling the neighborhood and letting them know that the open house is going on.
Yeah. We're gonna door knock for strategy number 3, 20 homes prior to that open house. So a good strategy for that, just one of my old favorites was knock 5 doors to the right, 5 doors to the left, and 10 across the street. That gets you your 20 homes prior to that open house, doing a personal invite. And then we're gonna place a minimum of 5 open house signs at least 3 hours before the open house. So 5 open house signs going up 3 hours before the open house. That way we're getting our marketing, neighbors get to see it, people driving by, see that we're doing business in the area. And that's it. We stuck with only 4 strategies there.
Yeah. You guys want me to share my script that I say to sellers when we're doing open houses, why that's important?
Yes.
So what I tell people when I say, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, you've probably seen it before, right? Other agents, they come out maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes before the open house. They'll put a sign in front, maybe if you're lucky on each end of the street, right? You've seen that before, right? Shaking my head, saying yes, getting agreement. Well, what I do is I put signs out at least 3 hours before the open house, and I put out a minimum of 8 signs. And the reason that's important is because we know that people are going to and from church, they're getting their bagels, they're doing their errands in the morning. And we've already agreed, right, that exposure is the name of the game. The more people that know your house is for sale, the more money you're going to get for it, right? So do you see how putting out that many signs that early can actually increase exposure to your home that is for sale?
Mhm.
So it's just a powerful script. Sometimes we throw stuff out there and then they're like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So I always think it's good to kind of just back that up. So, okay, 411. So this is the actual 411 part.
I just
So
add in though, check with the town, because not every town allows you to have open house signs.
very good point.
And five.
Or just buy cheap ones and then you don't care if they get.
Right.
taken out
Yeah.
and thrown out.
Or they're just gonna steal them from you.
Scott, Jackie was asking, sorry, I keep putting it on the wrong side of the screen for Jack. For the copy.
Oh,
of
well, the strategy be sent out, yeah.
Sorry, Jackie. Sorry, Jackie. This is an in-person only bonus. Might be here. Yeah, of course. We'll send this out to everybody.
I think we're gonna do what, Google Drive,
Yeah. we
share
send
a
it
Google
to
Drive link.
Yeah. we'll send it to you. All right, so the 411, right? So now we've got our one thing for the year. We've got our 135 set. So now we need to break this down into how are we gonna actually do this? Because we get so, this is great. There's so many strategies. Where the heck do I start? And then that's pretty much what this is. So Scott, you wanna run us
Yes.
through this?
And the goal here is, so when you're doing your 411, you're literally gonna sit there with your GPS as well. So when you're making that CEO time for yourself, you have both of these in front of you. And this is another one where, like, monotony alert here, the business goals at the top, they don't need to change. So every time you fill out your 411 for the yearly, your annual goals, it's 20 sales from the database, 10 sales from FSBO's expireds, and 10 sales from open houses. So we made that really easy. Our annual goals is just literally pulling our top 3 priorities and repeating it onto the 411. What will change is our monthly goals and our weekly goals.
I'm just assuming that this is making you do a personal GPS and a business, because it does bring up personal. So I'm assuming it's encouraging you to do this twice for your personal life and then for your business life, right?
I mean, I would,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
but yeah, I mean, that's 100%. So I mean, you don't have to,
Yeah.
don't force it if you're just trying to get some momentum on this, but yeah. Like we said, right, the health, right, when we vision ourselves and our someday goal, our personal lives are in alignment with our business too. So.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, for that personal side of things, if you hadn't even gotten to the step of doing a GPS for your personal stuff yet. You could certainly pull off of exercise 2
Mhm.
and say, what were those personal goals that I had set back here that I want to accomplish in the next year? So, my monthly goals on the business side, we did fill this out and we said. If we were looking at this GPS and we needed a place to start, right? This month, we thought it would be really great, at a minimum, business goal number 1 for the month. Get everyone onto that monthly neighborhood nurture or that monthly update email that we want to have going out. So if we don't already have that in place, we thought that was a great spot to start. For our database. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because if you looked at this GPS and said, oh my God, like, what am I doing next? It's a big mosh of stuff that's gonna happen all throughout the year. So you really, the 411, the beauty of it is you're just pulling goals from here and breaking them down so that now you can know what you're focused on for that month, for that week. So, number 2 that we thought was really important, we pulled from our priority number 2 with FSBOs and expireds. We said, oh my God, we've never called a FSBO or expired before. We better start practicing scripts and role playing. And then number 3 came from our open house goal, and we just said we're gonna host 3 open houses this month.
Yeah.
Good place to start.
And then that brings us down to our weekly goal, right? So then we have our 4 weeks in the year. So we don't need to accomplish everyone on the neighborhood nurture, right, in that first week of that first month. That is part of what makes this awesome, is that you're focused. It's taking, to Scott's point, right? It's taking this huge big thing and then breaking it down into this, and then breaking it down even further into what can I do right now? Right, so for everyone on neighborhood nurture or monthly update, well, what's the most simple thing I can do is make sure that everyone who needs to be tagged is tagged in my database so that I can make sure that they are on the neighborhood nurture, right? Seems simple enough, but it's important, right? Same thing. So part 2, practice scripts and role play. As Scott said, oh my God, I've never role played before. Where do I start? We can start building these big things in our heads. I have to get the best script. No, you just have to download the scripts, right? You just have to get the scripts. So this week, we're just gonna get the scripts. And then maybe next week, we're gonna find an accountability partner, somebody who else wants to role play. And then maybe week 3, we're gonna find some other scripts and kind of tweak what works for us. And then week 4. And then number 3 is host 3 open houses for the month. But maybe we just started and we don't have any open house signs, or we just came from another brokerage and we need, they're gonna get thrown out because they're in a town that throws them out. So we got to get cheap ones. So it can be as simple as order enough open house signs for the open house, right? And then maybe the next week is sign up for Mojo Dialer so I can circle prospect around them, or whatever that is in alignment with your plan that allows you to host 3 open houses this month. So week 2 could very much be, find someone who has a listing and ask them if I can do an open house, right? It's all about building momentum. I think, again, and just kind of in closing, and we'll stick around if anybody wants to talk more, but I think one of the beautiful things about this, and one of the challenging things about this, is it's not easy. I really think we were talking about it before. A lot of people I've talked to about the GPS and 411 leading up to this, I know about it, it's, kind of fell off of it, or I got to get back on it, or I don't know, like there is something about this exercise that can be challenging. And I think one of the biggest things is we don't understand how to do it. So we muscle through it and then we get frustrated and don't want to do it anymore. Or we don't give ourselves the time that this deserves. Again, being the CEO of your own company and making sure you show up for yourself, because when you show up for yourself, you can show up for other people. So I hope this brought you guys clarity. Scott, any closing thoughts? As we
No,
kind of
that was perfect.
wrap this up, guys. So like I said, we'll hang around. We want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if we got to run, that's fine. But thank you guys so much for showing up. We hope this was
Thank you, guys.
helpful.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Hey, by the way, does